So I seen somebody say some black people be too ghetto and ignorant to help guide their children into their full potential. And they was mad when that motherfucker said that shit, but that was some real shit. I ain't gonna lie. And I felt that shit too. But it is a reason for that behavior. And yet again, it is by design. Slavery made literacy illegal and tore families apart. The black codes from 1865 through 66 criminalized unemployment to force convict leasing. Then Plessy versus Ferguson legalized inferior schools, and the GI Bill of 1944 plus HOLC FHA redlining blocked black families from homes, loans, and wealth, guaranteeing underfunded schools through property tax law. Then the war on drugs. Per Nixon and Reagan. Crack versus powder cocaine sentencing. Mandatory minimums and the three-strike law. Removed millions of black fathers from the homes, while zero-tolerance school discipline fed the school-to-prison pipeline, and deindustrialization erased stable jobs from black families. Add environmental racism, lead paint, highways through black neighborhoods, and Flint-style water poisoning, because you know that is purposeful. And what people call bad parenting is really the outcome of policies like black codes, FHA manuals, and drug laws that legally broke families, sabotaged education, poisoned communities, and then blamed the behavior on culture instead of admitting the system engineered it. So white people often use false equivalences by lumping historically and socially insignificant slurs or offenses together with ones that carry deep systemic and historical violence, like equating and categorizing casually offensive words or jokes with the N-word or to the N-word, which has centuries of legal, social, and extrajudicial oppression behind it. From the slave codes of Virginia 1705 and Jim Crow laws to lynchings and segregation, this strategy, whether in media, courts, or social debates, functions to normalize or downplay the uniquely traumatic experiences of marginalized groups, allowing perpetrators to claim freedom of speech while masking the power dynamics embedded in language. A tactic very visible in controversies over words like Oriental versus the N-word, or casual anti-black slurs versus anti-white slurs. Where court sociologists and hate crime data per FBI hate crime statistics and the DOJ consistently show vastly different impacts. By framing all offensive language as equivalent, it distorts public perception, reduces accountability, and weakens policy interventions aimed at addressing real historical harms, ultimately eroding social trust and reinforcing structural inequalities. Stopping this is crucial because society relies on accurate historical and cultural literacy. Without it, laws like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and hate crime statutes lose their context. And education is undermined and generational trauma is perpetuated under a false veneer of balance or fairness. So, Mexico was a major hub of African enslavement from the 1500s all the way through the early 1800s. Importing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Africans into New Spain. Yet, after independence, it deliberately erased Afro-Mexicans from national identity through the ideology of mestizaje. Even though the first technical Mexican was an African named Gaspar Yanga, and the original inhabitants of Mexico and even the Americas were dark-skinned melanated people. We'll get into the relevance of that again in a second. Which centered European indigenous mixture, while minimizing or outright excluding African and darker skinned indigenous roots from censuses, textbooks, and cultural narratives, despite documented black founded communities like Yanga. established in the early 1600s by the Maroon leader, Gaspar Yanga, an African who successfully resisted Spanish rule and created what is widely recognized as the first free town in the Americas, but is rarely taught or celebrated nationally. Mexico often claims moral credit for freeing slaves, but this framing obscures the reality that enslaved people in Mexico were themselves black and Afro-Indigenous. That resistance and liberation were driven by those communities. And the 1829 abolition decree was issued by President Vicente Guerrero, an Afro-Indigenous man whose progressive policies and racial identity provoked elite backlash, leading to his overthrow and execution in 1831, revealing how dangerous black political power was to Mexico's ruling class, to the point where they reinstated slavery after killing him. Following abolition, Afro-Mexicans were further erased through caste reclassification, forced assimilation and whitening policies, and exclusion from official recognition, reinforcing the false idea that Mexico is solely mestizo or indigenous European, even though African presence deeply shaped its food, culture, language, military history, and population, with modern pigmentation patterns largely resulting from Spanish colonization, racial mixing, and centuries of anti-black social engineering. This erasure persisted legally and institutionally until very recently. Afro-Mexicans were not even counted in national censuses until the 21st century. Demonstrating that Mexico's history with African-descended people is not one of benevolent liberation, but of exploitation, suppression, and long-term denial of its own melanated African roots and foundation. Hey man, why do Muslim niggas act like they own Arabic? Like, folks, y'all know that's just a language, right? Like, it's not tied to a religion. Like, anybody could wake up tomorrow and be like, Wallahi. Motherfucker, you get too famous and a motherfucking Muslim here, you say Wallahi, they be like, oh, is he Muslim? No, bitch, I'm just bilingual. I know how to speak multiple languages. Fuck is we talking about? If you make me mad, I'm gonna start doing petty shit. Like, every time you call me, I'm gonna text you, but not call you back. Just little shit. Just little shit. Make sure I win. Like, you piss me off, now I gotta, like, piss you off back. You know what I'm saying? In any way possible.
Go. Okay, don't forgive or don't forget, bitch, I'ma hold a grudge. Why you think you know me, nigga? You been acting like a judge. You been